Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Believe, where we're playing World and Economica. Last time we had Hagana still working on that theorem, but she needed something to calculate all the math that she needed. Doing by hand was not enough. And so they looked into somebody that could program. Thankfully, Lisa had someone in mind. And so they went to speak with that person. And the person in question was Serrault, somebody Yoshiharu met at the beginning of the series. So they talked to him, and he ended up putting the thought into Yoshiharu's mind about Lisa's lap pillow. On the other end, the mysterious stock that Yoshiharu was sniffing out finally happened. And he got a lot of money from those stocks that he invested on it. And I think that this is where we stopped. So let's take a look at how things progress. The next day, there wasn't anything particular of note. I was still profiting at a good pace, and in the end, I managed to move the amount I could control to 10 million emules by the end of the week. Essentially, I earned more than 5 million emules. By doubling in a week, if that kept happening, I'd be able to gather an entire wealth of humanity. But that definitely wasn't going to continue. It was a one-time case with that mysterious stock. Still, I had managed a pretty hefty return with 5 million emules. The volatility of the market was big. So just by using that, the profits had been large. Mr. Trochet had slowed down in the last half of the week, and after a reversal, he had settled at 47.8 million moles. The distant second place, with 31 million moles, had already stopped trading. At this rate, getting second was definitely realistic, and I do not remember how much he had to start with. Was it 10? So right now he would be at 15, having like, was it 40 days? So a little over 6 weeks left to double that amount. Yeah, I can see that being realistic. Considering he got 50% more in a week. If I could go into second place, the 50,000 moles would go straight to Lisa. And I'd be headhunted by Schrödinger Street and leave this place. Giving something back to the place that took care of me before moving on to bigger things. That doesn't sound bad. Jokes aside, it might be possible to get there without Hagana. I thought that, but it was obvious that if I started treating Hagana like that way, it'd cause trouble. Yeah, don't even get started with that, at least you realize this. Lisa probably wouldn't like that. And Hagana was holed up in her room doing whatever she was doing. Going back and forth with that afroed Serrault. Apparently, she had received the program at some point. Okay, so he made the program she asked for. And so, Sunday, the rest of us warriors came. I was staring into space while eating breakfast. And while the laptop was at least on, I was so out of it that Lisa was laughing. Hagana had finished eating her toast and was drinking her hot milk when she put her cup down and spoke. I was backtesting the programming and... Huh? That was all I could say to those other words. And? So? I don't know whether I'm using it wrong or if the program's wrong. The numbers are insane. We mailed back and forth a lot and I still can't figure it out. And so, I looked at Hagana, and she kept staring at her cup. Oh, what's going on? When I hesitated, Lisa, who had been watching things behind Hagana, tried to signal something to me over her shoulder. And then I finally understood. Ah, you wanna go to the Big Bowl Cafe? Hagana looked up. Yes. Then just say so. Hagana's lips form a thin line. At least remember how to get there. As I said that and was pulling Up the map on the laptop, Lisa glared at me from behind the Hagana. Yeah, she doesn't want directions to get there. She wants help because she wasn't super comfortable being near Serrault. At the same time, Hagana was in her own way, looking down at the table with no expression. There was something she wanted to say, but couldn't. Looking between Lisa and Hagana a few times, my dulled wits found their way to the correct answer somehow. Or do you want to go together? When I asked, Hagana jumped a little, then looked at me slowly. Please. Oh, okay. Very direct now. Hagana said that one thing clearly, and Lisa shook her head and went back to washing. My work here is done. When we went to the Big Bow Cafe, Hagana seemed afraid of Serrault's head. There we go, now you're realizing. But it could be just that she was afraid of Serrault himself. Even if she weren't afraid, she probably wasn't comfortable with an unfamiliar people. Hagana was strong-willed, but oddly weak in places. I wouldn't be surprised if outside she was a timid little miss. Honestly, she kinda is. The sooner the better. I want to be in time for Monday. Alright, then today it is. I gulped down my last ham and eggs and shut down the computer. Is that guy even awake at this time? No one had an answer to my muttering. No one knew. I forgot about this hip-hop music. Sunday mornings have a special air about them. On weekdays, the atmosphere of the city was very active, possibly due to the many people working. However, on days off, everything was somehow more relaxed and calm. There were also fewer people in the streets, so the air felt refreshing. As always, along the way I would look at things on the street and wonder what companies they came from, what happened to them, how did they went bankrupt. Because of that, once in a while I'd wind up being some distance from Hagana, but this time she didn't complain or glare at me. When I slowed down, she'd stop and look around aimlessly as she waited for me, and then we'd walk off again. While doing this constantly, we came to the Big Bow Cafe eventually. I kind of forgot what voice I gave him. When we entered, we found a large man who totally suited the name of the place leaning on the counter, reading an e-magazine board. He glanced our way sharply. Welcome. Hagana completely froze and stood dead center of the automatic door. Is Serrault around? Another stranger? Boss? He's in the far back, room number 2. Thanks. The ox-like guy gave a gruff nod and went back to his magazine. I turned around to the still frozen Hagana and motioned her to move to the back. However, she didn't even move when I started walking off, so I took her hand and pulled her along. The ox was glancing between us and his magazine, but in the end I got the feeling he was smiling, as if he saw a young couple. You're not scared? As I walked through the narrow maze of halls, Hagana spoke. Huh? He seemed like a bad person. Bad? Well, he wasn't a banker, I'll tell you that much. Hagana seemed to have trouble coming up with a response to that, but her expression was serious. Just train up your body. Then most people won't seem that scary. How? You train? You didn't see me trash that Toyama guy? Also dudes around here I can easily beat. Except the one that actually train. I see. Then Hagana nodded. I thought about saying something, but decided not to. I had a feeling that being afraid of the big man wasn't just due to a simple difference in strength, but some other reason due to her backstory. Even if she had come here of all places, she would have come by herself if she were able to. And so, I guess Naruto is here. At the far end of the place, there were 2 rooms. The number 1 and number 2 rooms cost 3 times as much as the other rooms. You awake? I knocked on the door. The place was quiet, so I couldn't shout. Despite knocking a few times, there was no answer, so I opened the door gently. There was some kind of movie playing silently on the computer screen. Did he have his headphones on and couldn't hear? Immediately, I shut the door. What happened? Hagana asked, looking at me. I replied somewhat hurriedly. Can you go over there for a bit? Why? Just do it. Hagana didn't look very happy, but she eventually went. Reluctantly, she went back down the hall about 3 steps. I motioned her to go back up a little bit more. Hagana's brows furrowed, but she did go back another 2 steps. Well, I guess that ought to be enough. I nodded and opened the door and went in. Ah, that's the kind of movie that we got going on, huh? That's why he told her to back away and don't look. Look at Serrault here. And I see why this room is more expensive. Look how wide it is. The table, the desk, and the sofa. And his eye mask. Inside the booth, there were silent porn videos playing all over the screen. Hey, I poked at Serrault's head as he slept on the sofa. It's this goofy music too. Soon, Serrault woke up and looked at me sleepily. All he made were mumbled note sounds, and then he yawned wide. He was a tall guy, so even though he was lying on the sofa, his legs below the knee were sticking out. I know that feeling. It would have been better to go home than sleep in a place like this. When Serrault was yawning, I cut the power to the screens. I'd just seen a girl about Lisa's age in an inappropriate attire in front of a deep space background, doing inappropriate things, I should say. Don't doze off with all your porn on. Oh, not your taste? That series has a pretty lovely girls in it. All naked, except for some space gear. Ain't it great? I'm not talking about that. Then what? Oh, you want something like Little Miss Hagana? Well, it's not like it doesn't exist, you know, but wherever you look, there's something for everyone. But you're going to get arrested. Do you understand that? Hey, I'm seriously going to kill you if you don't shut up. I got it. Don't get worked up. I grabbed Serrault's lapel and was squeezing, but Serrault was unfazed. Getting worked up looked stupid, so I let go. Serrault scratched his head and laughed crudely. And what do you want? Jeez. Hagana wants something from you. Huh? She's here? Serrault was surprised and adjusted his clothing quickly. There was so much fix. He was clutching his hair. She's waiting right outside. I opened the door and there was porn playing. Oh, then tell me. Well, then tell me. She's going to think I'm some kind of creep. Yeah, 'cause you surely aren't. Like I care. She's here about how the program wasn't working right. Oh, she said something about that in the emails. I didn't quite understand it. I'm going to call her in. Yeah, I'm good now. Facing a small mirror on the wall, he was turning his face to the left, right, and messing with a big mess on his head. When I poked my head out of the room, a bored Hagana looked my way. She clearly seemed relieved, but her eyes were also a bit stern, and she seemed kind of sullen at being left out. It's a good thing you were left out, girl. It's okay. Yeah, the gentleman's down with preparations. I see. When I pulled back into the booth, Hagana stepped in somewhat hesitantly. It wasn't like she had never seen anything like it before, but it was so different from Elisa's church, it probably made her uneasy. Hey, Miss Hagana. Hagana just nodded in Serrault's greeting. Serrault spun the chair in front of the computer around and smiled, inviting her to sit down. Hagana hesitantly sat herself down on it. I heard you had issues with the program. Yes, if I'm setting the time period for the statistics calculation, an error comes up. For example, as if a switch had flipped in her, Hagana took out her terminal and started explaining. I listened, but I had no idea what was going on. It sounded like magic spells to me. There didn't seem to be any need for me, and it was cramped with 3 people. So I put my hand on the door and made to leave. Hagana stopped her explanation that instant. Yeah, she's comfortable because you're there, man. Remember the whole reason why you had to come with her instead of her just giving directions? Huh? When I turned around, our eyes met. She had on this defenseless face that said, "You're going to leave?" My heart jumped and I froze. But I didn't want Serrault to notice, so I quietly slumped my shoulders, took my hand off the door reluctantly, and leaned lightly on the desk. Why was that so hard to read? Hagana watched worriedly, then resumed her explanation, like nothing happened. It all happened in the space of a second. Serrault was frowning at Hagana's questions, so it didn't seem like he noticed, at least. Hagana started, and the music bit picked back up again. Hagana started conversing with Serrault again. While I watched them, I struggled to calm the beating of my heart. True, this cramped, messy place would be scary to be left alone in, even for a girl like Hagana. But what surprised me was Hagana's defenseless face. I was struck by this strong, protective urge, like I was strongly moved to defend her. I had never been relied on by someone this much. That felt nice. While leaning against the table, I thought it didn't feel that bad. Hey, I got it. He's just being a bit tsundere here. I see. Then it's gotta be... Serrault was muttering as Hagana spoke. You look bored. Serrault spoke suddenly while Hagana was speaking. If you want, you can play games there, and you can connect it to the net here. You can use it to kill some time, since this seems like it's gonna take a while. It will? Yeah. Since he offered, I went around the table and looked at the stuff scattered there. At the same time, Serrault turned back to Hagana and spoke seriously. Please don't tell me that if you turn the screen on, it's gonna go back to what it was before. Please tell me they fixed that. Wow, Hagana, you really stimulate my intellectual curiosity. I may look like this, but I like tough problems. Makes it worth doing, you know? I snickered, just listening to that from that side. Really? Yeah, I was an engineering student, you know? I didn't think that I'd be able to talk math with a girl like you. I see. It was obviously flattery, but while Hagana was slightly hesitant and looked downward, she didn't look unhappy about it. No doubt, it was fun to have someone to talk with on her favorite subject. Someone that actually understood what she was saying. Lisa's head hurt just from stocks, so she couldn't do it. And her students were her students, and not in the right position for that kind of chatter. So that would mean that Serrault was quite intelligent in his own right. But was that true? The only people who can't come to the shop are dirty rats like this guy. I love if you came more. Hey, what's with the dirty? I'm fine with rat, but dirty? I take a shower once in a while. Well, it's the truth. A bunch of complaints came in that there's a smell. Yes, how smell? I remember that. See? Serrault left and Hagana agreed. Dang. But if it's the truth, then no helping it. I gave up on retorting and fled games. Powering up the display, I went to stick the memory card for the game to the machine and stuck my head under the table. That instant, Serrault jumped up from the sofa, his mouth working silently. Yeah, it seems like it's happening exactly what I was talking about. They only turned off the screen and did not change the content that was on the monitor. Looking at him from under the desk, I wonder what the heck he was up to. Then, when Serrault's hand moved past Hagana and made motions at the screen, I remembered that he had left porn running. What's wrong? Hagana asked Serrault. Serrault looked at her. Hagana twisted and made she turn this way. Game over. That's the face that Serrault had on. At that moment, I forcibly yanked the cables near my hand, saving the day. With a whine, the computer itself shut down. By the time Hagana turned around, there shouldn't be anything on the screen. What's going on? Hagana's eyes went from the screen back to us. Oh, I pulled the wrong plug. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, it's alright. Serrault played along. Really? Oof. Yeah, don't worry about it, man. Hell, thank God. Thank God. While Sarah and I exchanged words, Hagana had tilted her head, exuding question marks the whole time, especially with the whole thank God thing. Since when were they religious? But yeah, Yoshiharu once again saved her from seeing that. It ended up being afternoon by the time we left the Big Bull Cafe. Starting from Hagana and Serrault's talks, they made adjustment to the program right there, so it took extra time. Even so, according to Serrault's boasting, he was about the only person who could work that quickly. But we had no way to prove it. I didn't know how true that was, but he certainly typed fast. At first, I was wondering whether he was just slapping keys to show off in front of Hagana. You know, like those movies. But ultimately, the issues Hagana mentioned seemed fixed, and should put in some numbers, looked at the results, and nodded in satisfaction. It was just that by the time we left the Big Bow Cafe, the only thing on my mind was lunch. I was famished. Hey, when I turned around and spoke, Hagana was putting her terminal with the freshly completed program carefully in her bag. You go on back alone. Why? I'm going to eat something around here. I wouldn't be able to last into the church. While they were programming, Serrault had graciously offered to get some pizza, but Hagana turned him down. Apparently, Lisa would have some food prepared at the church when we got back. However, if I kept pace with Hagana from here, it'd take a whole 30 minutes. I couldn't say that I wouldn't starve along the way. You do know the way back, right? I asked as we went down the narrow stairs. At the landing between stairs, Hagana stopped and stood there. What? When I stopped and asked, Hagana lifted up her head and spoke. I'll do the same. After a moment's surprise, I spoke. There's food at the church, though. I plan on eating that too, you know. Hagana never ate all that much. Hagana's eyes looked surprised at my words, but soon her expression tightened and she spoke with a glare. There's no food at the church. Wait, what? Now I'm the one with questions. That was because having food at the church was the reason she used to turn Serrault's offered pizza down. Lisa wasn't gonna make something before she went off to her part-time job? She didn't. My brain was having trouble working from hunger, so I couldn't see why. Did she want to eat alone with me? I was half jokingly thinking of that silly idea when it struck me. Nah, I couldn't beat it. You're that afraid of Serrault? When I said it while laughing, she shrank down physically. I'll take that as a yes. That was it. Oh, well, his head does have a powerful presence. Hagana was looking away unhappily after being found out. But she looked at me after I spoke, then nodded. I don't like men. She whispered. You know, I'm a man too, right? You do realize that. When I asked, she looked down the stairs at me and spoke clearly. Aren't you a kid? Oh, I see. She meant man as an adult male, not just male. I see. My face froze a bit at that, but when Hagana finished speaking, she regained her composure and quietly went down the stairs like she normally did. And when she came right in front of me, she spoke. So, where are we eating? Take me there now. I slumped my shoulders and was about to start walking. Being treated like a kid by a girl shorter than myself and getting pissed at that. I guess I really was still a kid. While mulling over that, I suddenly had an idea. Oh, right. What? Around this time on Sundays, Chris might be around. Chris? Hagana spoke worriedly as she looked at me. How? You have something you need from Chris? At this time on Sundays, Chris is around the tunnels, right? Well, that's true. Why don't we get some rolls of bread and eat it there? It feels good after all. I like it there. Hagana kept looking at me worriedly. He must have been like a mother cat protecting a kitten. Chris was certainly a bit clueless, so I could understand why. It is her precious student. I see. After silently considering what my words meant, Hagana nodded. Then that's fine. Great. Now let's get supplies. Do you have money? When I asked, Hagana tightened her brows unhappily and looked at me. I've got some from Lisa. Don't get so angry. I'm not angry. Well, it's fine. If there isn't enough, I'll pay. Hagana was about to reply immediately with something, but I kept talking. Last time, you were haggling for me, right? That was apparently her trying to thank me, and repaying thanks with gratitude was a bit strange. But, considering what I heard in front of the clothing shop, I thought this was about the best way. Hagana's face said that she wanted to say something, but apparently she couldn't find the words. Looking away with her poker face on, she nodded. Ah. In my voice, her eyes turned back to me. Don't try to force the price down. Please. Hagana looked sad for an instant, but gradually turned more annoyed. But she didn't kick my leg this time, so that's a plus. Okay. Instead, surprisingly, she agreed with a nod. Hagana and I went to a nearby bakery and each bought some rolls and drinks. We then went back to the tunnel to the 6th outer section. Obviously, it was wonderful weather again today, and gazing leisurely at the scenery while eating was nice. I had suggested we eat with Chris because it was too embarrassing to eat just with Hagana. But Chris was nowhere to be found, and yeah, I imagine that was the reason why you decided to invite Chris. Oh well, eventually she'll come. I couldn't wait to get to the church to eat, and I couldn't really tell Hagana to go home first. I tried. Settling my bag on my back, I jumped the tree like I normally did, kicking it with my foot and landing on top of the tunnel. Oh well, let's eat. I sat down impatiently and prepared to dig into the sandwich wrapped in a recycled paper. What stopped me was how Hagana was looking up angrily from the middle of the street. She did not have the same dexterity as you. I can't get up. Come to think of it, Hagana had totally gotten used to the lunar gravity, and thus had a weak body. It was annoying, but I couldn't just ignore her. I jumped down from the tunnel, sandwich in hand, and took a big bite. Your thanks. Hagana came over and held out her bag of food. Your bag too. She hesitated, but reluctantly gave it to me. I took those things in my other hand, and while I was at it, took another bite of my sandwich. Now, sit on my left arm. Huh? Come on. I knelt down and took another bite of the sandwich in my right hand. I held oh, another typo, left arm out like a tree branch while holding her bag. Hagana looked at my arm twice, thoroughly, and finally, after realizing it meant it, sat down on my arm. Getting close to her, I could tell she was a bit dusty, but her sweet scent tickled my nose. Grab onto my head, or whatever. But don't strangle me, please. What? What are we... Before she could finish, I stood up. Hagana stopped talking and clutched at my head reflexively. And... Of course, I couldn't use the tree to jump up, so I took a longer route. I headed to the cliff face and jumped from the tree root to rock to another root and then to a branch. After that, I finally landed on top of the tunnel exit. At every jump, Hagana was making a tiny scream-like noise. She wasn't choking me because she was clumsily grabbing my head hard enough to crush it. Her ring finger and middle finger were about to go up my nose. But thanks to her holding on so tightly, the area behind my left ear felt something soft. It looked like nothing was there, but apparently there was. If you know, you know. Hey, how long do you plan on grabbing on? When I spoke, Hagana finally came to herself. The way she suddenly let go, she apparently had forgotten that she was sitting on my arm. What? She lost her balance and was about to fall backwards. Sighing to myself, I held a sandwich from my right hand in my mouth and reached out to pull her back. You just got enough sense of coordination, do you? I can't say I do. With her hair still in disarray, Hagana spoke warily. Here, your bread and bag. Taking her things from my hand, Hagana fixed her hair with her hands. And then, when she looked up, she was suddenly taken in by the scenery. Okay, I was thinking of using that Serrault thumbnail as thumbnail, but that does not beat this. Look at it. The tunnel right here. Yoshiharu also has a pretty nice outfit with that red scarf. They had their food bags. Amazing. Standing at the top of the tunnel. Also, how they showed this scene was top notch. Like zooming out. Standing at the top of the tunnel, she murmured, apparently forgetting about her hair. Feeling a bit proud, I sat down and went at the sandwich. This is the best view that I know. Plus, there's no one around. Do you always eat here? Apparently, she finally came back from admiring the view. She was looking down at me when she asked. Nope, but once in a while I'd come. You can see Newton City from here after all, and it's great for thinking. Hagana looked once more at the scenery, squinted and nodded slowly. Chris said that she'd think about problems here often too. Too bad you can't get up here. At that, Hagana's lip tightened, and after finally sitting down, she spoke. We should have brought chairs. How tacky. It's more logical. It sounded a bit like she was just being petty, but it also sounded like she was serious. And since it's Hagana, I wouldn't put past her to bring a ladder here. Just imagine that, I chuckled. But... I was about to put some vegetable that fell out of my sandwich in my mouth. Hagana spoke. It's a wonderful view. It was like she was praising me, so I was happy. But it was also embarrassing. The third floor of the church isn't bad either. So I said that, and Hagana turned around and answered. The view here is totally different. Well, that was obvious. Plus, it reminds me of another view I know. When I asked back, she was looking at the view with distant eyes. Her face didn't have the usual sharpness to it, but it also wasn't a peaceful one. Homesickness, that's what it was. When that word occurred to me, Hagana's eyes had returned to her sandwich. Anyway, I want to ask you something. What? I couldn't say that I had been taken in by her face, so I came to myself and replied hurriedly. What is it? About the contest. Yeah, what is it? Were you going to ask a question? Even when I asked again, she didn't try to speak, and she kept looking at her sandwich. She even ignored my pressing, so I knew she was thinking about her question. About the prize money. But what she finally said was direct. Yeah? You're really gonna split it with Lisa? Asking even though we already come this far, in the end, she came back to that. I answered while licking some mustard off my fingers. If it's under 50,000 moles, everything. If it's 200,000 moles, then maybe half of what's left after the 50,000, I guess. Really? You don't trust me that much? I wasn't angry, but asked back, and Hagana looked away meekly, and then looked up at me meekly. Even if... Even if my program doesn't work? Hagana's black eyes were looking at me sadly. I couldn't laugh about her being a worrywart. Hagana was practically making fun of herself, saying that her math would be useless in the real world. Well, if possible, I hope it would be useful. But, well, Lisa did take me in after all. Plus, if I managed to get into the ranks with prize money, headhunters would come. If anything, that was my goal. If I could just leave the church on good terms, a few 100,000 moles was well worth it. Plus, we still don't know for sure whether you'd be of use or not. When I spoke, Hagana was seriously looking at me with an unexpected expression. Then, slowly lowering her eyes, she nodded. I want to be useful. Hagana spoke clearly. Just once? When I spoke, Hagana suddenly raised her head. And when she saw that I had on the smirk, her brows furrowed almost audibly and glared at me. I'm joking, calm down. Shut up. Surprisingly, she came back with a childish retort, and my mood got even better. But anyone, not just Hagana, would have hated not being useful. I just looked at what I'd seen for us and spoke. Well, hopefully it will all work out. Hagana had been nibbling quietly on her sandwich, but I felt her eyes look up. And she also looked at the view and nodded slowly. The world seemed to be enjoying itself peacefully. I hope that the people who crossed paths with me could do the same. A short while before, I only thought about gambling, and thinking about the stuff was out of character for me. If I could get first in the contest, I'd get a prize of 200,000 moves, and also be headhunted by Schrödinger Street. Just thinking about that would make me uneasy with excitement. Honestly speaking, I was hoping the Hagana's program would be useful. However, I've never had luck with that kind of investing magic, and I didn't know its real value. I finished eating the last one of my sandwich and lay back. A little bit later, there was a sound of steps on the rocks, and Chris appeared, carrying lots of stuff. Oh, I guess we're back. Okay, let's stop here then. I don't know how long the next scene is gonna be, so we're just gonna stop at about 40 minutes. So there we go. We went back to talk about the program, and yeah, Hagana is very much relying on Yoshiharu to be at her side to help out with strangers, especially men. And there's the whole thing with Serrault and that screen that he had on, that Yoshiharu did the best he can to protect Hagana's eyes from it. In the end, it seemed to have worked out. And at the end, they had that short scene at the top of the tunnel, enjoying the view and talking about the conclusion of the contest, which was kind of a nice touch and a small bonding moment for them. But yeah, it's good that their relationship is finally starting to look up. They're starting to actually be friendly with each other, because before they were just shooting fire with fire, and that was just a hot mess. But now things are much nicer, so I hope things continue like this. But with that being said, see you next time. Bye.